Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Ing-Wen in Beijing. Since the pro-independence DPP chairwoman Tsai Ing-Wen took over the leadership of Taiwan in May, cross-strait ties have reached new lows. The official communication mechanism has been suspended due to Tsai's refusal to abide by the 1992 consensus, which Beijing stresses is the political foundation for peaceful cross-strait relations. How far will Tsai Ing-wen go in her endeavors to estrange the island from the mainland? Will the mainland-friendly Kuomintang restore its party unity after its defeat in the local elections? And what is Beijing's new strategy in handling cross-strait ties? To answer these questions, we are joined in the studio by Joanna Lei, former Taiwan legislator, and Dr. Zhong Houtao of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. But before we get started, let's look at this.
Taiwan's first female leader has had a testing start. Tsai Ing-wen's poll numbers have plummeted during the first 100 days since her inauguration in May. Tsai promised to maintain the status quo for peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait, but her ambiguity on the 1992 consensus and recent policies are proving to be problematic. When 24 tourists from the mainland were killed in a tragic bus fire in Taiwan on July 19th, Tsai, as leader of the island, which has benefited greatly from tourists from across the strait, didn't mention the mainland tourists who perished. Instead, she spoke elegiacally about the Taiwan tourist guide who was also killed in the tragedy. In the same month, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague ruled Taiping Island as not being an island but a rock, not entitled to its own economic zone. Taiwanese fishing boats set sail for the island to protest against the court ruling, while Tsai's government remained largely silent. Many criticized Tsai for pursuing her own political ambition at the cost of the interests of people on both sides of the strait. In response to the severe economic challenges, Tsai has proposed a new southbound policy to move the island away from its over-reliance on the mainland market and to cultivate more business opportunities in South and Southeast Asian countries. However, many doubt if the ambitious plan will work because those countries have already attracted huge overseas investments and Taiwan doesn't have any unique competitive edge in this regard. On the diplomatic front, Taiwan is pushing for participation in the 39th session of the International Civil Aviation Organization Assembly. In response, Beijing reiterated that talks and arrangements for Taiwan's participation in international organizations must be based on the One China principle. Due to the Taiwan authorities' failure to endorse the 1992 consensus embodying the One China principle, the cross-strait communication and negotiation mechanism has come to a standstill.
Welcome to Dialogue. What do you think of the performance of Tsai Ing-wen a couple of months after she took over the office?
Well, during the campaign, Tsai Ing-wen has been very silent in terms of her cross-strait relations and cross-strait policies. So she got elected because of that silence. After she took office, starting from her May 20th speech, there were a lot of signals sent by mainland China, and people in Taiwan gradually understood that Tsai Ing-wen's policy, even though it's silent, it could be very, very dangerous. And that number is very clearly expressed in her public opinion poll numbers. So her policies, as well as cross-strait relations approaches and all that, have been greatly challenged in the local polls, and there are a lot of people now reconsidering their support for her.
Dr. Zhong, do you think there is a strong rebound against her office performance, given her strong reluctance to accept the 1992 consensus in Taiwan?
Yeah, I think that is the most important reason for her, the sliding supporting rate in Taiwan. Almost all of the factors, including domestic and internal or external affairs, are closely related to 1990 consensus. If the Tsai Ing-wen still refuses 1992 consensus, then the cross-strait economic relations would be going down, would be decreasing. Then the Taiwan economy would witness the decrease.
Is it easy job for Tsai Ing-wen to remove Taiwan from its dependence on the mainland market?
Well, that has been her thesis since her last term during Chen Shui-bian's ruling. Her main thesis is that Taiwan should diversify its risk profile, should put all the eggs in different baskets. Taiwan's economy can benefit from having multiple centers, European, Japan, and the United States. However, it is very clear that you look at the business community and the economic development across the Taiwan Straits, more businessmen, even though they have other choices, they chose to be in each other's arms, and they chose to put their eggs in that basket. So when Tsai Ing-Wen got elected, she basically said, we're going to depend on biotechs, military and defense industry, both will have a heavy linkage with Japan and the United States. Those declarations have not yielded any tangible results. And the third strategy she had was to go in south, a southbound policy, making the mid-sized to small-sized enterprises migrate from mainland China, perhaps, to the South China Sea. And that policy has yielded no result at this point. So what we have seen is a blueprint that makes sense academically, but in reality, in practicality and pragmatism, it was not the choice of the business community. Political elites may have their thoughts. Business elites will make their choices.
We'll come back to examine the economic difficulties or adversity of the new circumstances that Tsai Ing-wen is facing. But let's go back to the principle of 1992. Currently, the Taiwanese authorities are applying for participation in the 39th International Civil Aviation Organization Assembly, but the spokesperson of the State Council Taiwan Affairs Office of the mainland emphasized overwhelmingly the importance and the necessity of, first of all, accepting the 1992 consensus, which will definitely lay the groundwork for, or political groundwork for sustainable dialogue across the Taiwan Strait. However, Tsai Ing-wen said in an interview with the Washington Post, we cannot accept something against the will of the electorate in the Taiwan island. What do you think of her seemingly apparent provocative behavior towards this principle?
Actually, this is the first time for Tsai Ing-wen to publicly refuse the 1992 consensus. You know, before she just neither accept nor refuse the 1992 consensus, but this time she publicly stated that it is almost impossible for her to accept this consensus.
But then, is it possible for Taiwan to be accepted by the organizing committee of the Civil Aviation Assembly?
No, impossible. You know, the Taiwan has taken no contact with ICAO, or International Civil Aviation Organization, since 1972, after it was expelled from this organization. Since then, Taiwan has been trying to participate in this organization, but only for one chance, that is in 2013. You know, on the basis of negotiation with the 1992 consensus between the two sides. That means the only way for Taiwan to participate in this organization is to get help from Chinese mainland. And if there is no mutual trust between the two sides, the Taiwan will not get any help from Chinese mainland, then it will be quite hard for it to participate.
Given the devastating erosion of the political foundation that will ensure sustainable dialogue across the Taiwan Strait, what do you think of the current allegation, if not rumor, that Pope Francisco of Vatican is considering proactively establishment of diplomatic relations at the cost of its official ties with Taiwan? Do you think this will deal a heavy blow to the Catholic Church in Taiwan? What do you think of the prospects here?
Well,
because that has a lot to do with the further shrinking of the international breathing space of Taiwan one way or another.
Vatican is important not just in and of itself. It is the lead of all the Catholic world, including all South America. So a relationship with Vatican will be a very important one in addressing the needs and dialogues with the entire Catholic population worldwide. We certainly watch it with eager and hope that it would be something that's handled diplomatically, if I may say so. However, Tsai Ing-wen must realize one thing, that is, in the past 10-12 years, we have enjoyed an unprecedented peaceful co-development with mainland China. And that is built on a political trust. That's the condition precedent. 92 consensus, while there are terms and things that she doesn't want to admit, but it was the political foundation of all the nice things that have happened, including the ICAO participation, exactly. WHA participation, and being a former sort of blue camp legislator, I really do not take pride in saying I told you so, but we did tell you so. We told you that peaceful co-development does not come without a price. And as a leader, you must make a decision in terms of the relative importance of all these issues. You must prioritize it. If you so choose, if you choose a very ideological and extremist view and take that approach, you may jeopardize the well-being of the people. And we have told her numerous times, and it was always met with a face that says, no, it wouldn't happen. You know, we are now clearly in the peace pact, and there will not be anything that's detrimental to the well-being of the people in Taiwan. Now, Tsai Ing-wen and her entire cadre is experiencing shrinking international space. The space is shrinking not just in terms of formal ties, but also NPO, NGO participations in those senses. And I hope that we don't have to tell her we told you so, and we hope that she will recognize that the well-being of the people is still more important than the partisan ideology that she is pursuing herself.
You know, quite a few weeks ago, a trial balloon was indeed released by the mainland authorities regarding the international breathing space of Taiwan. We resumed official ties with a small African state. Now, were the official ties between the Vatican and the mainland to be established in the near future?
Yeah.
Do you think those small countries in Central America that have a very strong Catholic background will consider proactively establishing official ties with the mainland? And that'll wreak havoc with the international space of Taiwan. What do you think of Tsai Ing-wen's current concerns?
The most concern for Tsai Ing-wen is that maybe Taiwan will lose more and more the so-called diplomatic partners. Actually, there are only 2 partners or diplomatic partners in Africa, but there are 12 partners in Latin. So I think in those 12 partners, I think at least 6 or even more are trying to set up a diplomatic relationship with the Chinese mainland. From the past experience, you could find that the Taiwan's international space or the foreign relationship should be based on the cross-strait relationship. If Tsai Ing-wen could tackle the cross-strait relationship very properly, then Taiwan could enjoy the international space just like before. But if she failed to tackle the cross-strait relationship properly, maybe the Taiwan's international space could become much smaller and smaller. And then its diplomatic, the number of its diplomatic partners could become much smaller, I think. And last, maybe only 10 or even less.
Don't you think Tsai Ing-wen could come across and go down history as a pragmatic leader of Taiwan? Since if you look at the inaugural speech, she neither accepted the 1992 consensus nor denied it, since she was summoned to Washington before the inauguration ceremony, that she should not be yet another Chen Shui-bian to be a troublemaker and to provoke unilateral the status quo of Taiwan Strait. So let's take issue with the flexibility. Now, after all, the Taiwanese delegation walked into the stadium at the opening ceremony of the real Olympic Games using Chinese Taipei as the title and the capacity in which it was accepted by the IOC. Is that a sign of flexibility for Tsai Ing-wen, who is, of course, a die-hard pro-secession political force in Taiwan?
Well, the inaction in that Rio Olympic doesn't necessarily indicate what Tsai Ing-wen really thinks, because we've been participating and competing under that Chinese Taipei title and the specific flag, specific songs. So Tsai Ing-wen basically kept her promise of maintenance of status quo. In the Olympic, she maintained status quo. On the other hand, if we look at cross-strait relations, we have to put it in the context of Japan, United States, and cross-straits. So when you look at that rectangle, Tsai Ing-wen has a very unique opportunity. Currently, she enjoyed greater support from the United States and Japan than her predecessor, Chen Shui-bian, 8 years ago. So Tsai Ing-wen is the first real DPP leader who has experienced and enjoyed greater international support in pursuing her ideological path. Chen Shui-bian, if you all remember, in his major speech, he said, 4 no's, and 1 won't happen. So those were under tremendous international pressure. In other words, my read is United States has pressurized Chen Shui-bian to make a very clear, stated position that he will not pursue the Taiwan independence cause, while Tsai Ing-wen was given a space to be latent about this, not stated, but latent. She sort of said she wouldn't pursue it, but she didn't come out to say, I definitely will not pursue it. I have this 4 no's and 1 no. So Chen Shui-bian and Tsai Ing-wen are under very different international regime, especially under very different U.S. Asian regime.
Okay,
I guess the general strategy of back to Asia. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Zhou.
Okay, just one point. That is, Olympic is just a non-official international organization, so it does not require a state or something like that as its member. Since Taiwan is not a state, since Olympic is just a non-official organization, then Taiwan could participate or join in Olympic. But ICO is totally different. It is an international official organization under UN, United Nations. Then there are only 2 kinds of membership. That is, one is a state with the sovereignty, and another is an international organization. As Taiwan is neither a state with the sovereignty nor international organization, then it could be very hard for it to join in ICO assembly. The only way for it to just get help, I mean, under the name of China, then maybe the 2 sides could cooperate on this issue. Then maybe Taiwan could have a chance.
Come back to examine the so-called southbound strategy. That was first initiated by Li Tenghui, former leader of Taiwan.
Correct.
What's the likelihood?
Well, the first time Li Tenghui tried it, a lot of businessmen actually followed his leadership, going into Southeast Asia, Thailand in particular, Malaysia is another. But after a while, they have experienced a huge defeat. There weren't any success stories. Then Li Tenghui had another eastbound policy. He brought people to South America and Central America. People who went with him suffered huge losses economically. That's what I said earlier. I think economic elites really know what are the most hospitable grounds for their business to be conducted. And if you follow just the political leaders and policy, then once you encounter issues and problems or even economic losses, who's going to be there to bail you out? The government certainly never have promised to bail you out completely. The southbound policy right now has greater challenge than when Li Tenghui first tried it, because the One Belt, One Road is in procession. A lot of economies are building stronger ties with mainland China. So if Taiwan tried to establish something outside of the scheme of One Belt, One Road, which will be highly unappealing to most of the economies, and if it does try to move within it, it does seem to be inconsistent or incongruent with what Tsai Ing-wen is currently claiming. So I see her in a very tight bind. She felt that there are rooms for her to maneuver, but China, in its grand strategy, has taken those spaces, including Southeast Asia, including all the way through Central Asia to Europe, because One Belt, One Road is there. And the huge investment in infrastructure is there. A lot of economies will be looking at that opportunity and weigh the pros and cons by accepting what Tsai Ing-wen is proposing.
Do you think Tsai Ing-wen actually bets her political future on the success of the southbound strategy, but she will never ever be able to bypass the ECFA, the very strong economic link that Mr. Ma Ying-jeou helped establish during his leadership?
And for Tsai Ing-wen's southbound policy, I just at one point that is, I just came back from some South Asia countries. From my observation, that those South Asia countries are not so welcome about this Tsai Ing-wen's policy for several reasons. The first is that Taiwan's most of Taiwan's companies are small and middle enterprises or companies, and these companies are not so economically friendly. For example, the Formosa plastic in Vietnam, they are fined for 5,000 million US dollars.
Are you talking about South Asia or Southeast Asia?
Southeast Asia, I'm sorry.
Vietnam.
Yeah. And actually, Tsai Ing-wen's southbound policy include not only Southeast Asia, but also South Asia. And and another country is Israel.
Israel.
Israel. Yeah. So I think it seems Tsai Ing-wen's policy is doomed to fail in future. I think this is my conclusion. The only way for her to boost Taiwan's economy is to bridge the cross-strait relations, economic relations, I mean. And the only way to do this is to strengthen ECFA and to execute to sign more agreement between these two sides, and only by the cooperation between the two sides could, I mean, just like as Joanna said, by the way of One Belt, One Road initiative, then maybe Taiwan, those Taiwan businessmen could enjoy more opportunities.
Thank you very much. After all, the campaign pledge of Tsai Ing-wen would only be honored by economic success. You are watching Dialogue with Joanna Lei Chen from Taiwan and Dr. Zhong Ho Tao from CAS. Both are experts on Taiwanese affairs. We'll come back in a few minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. Let's look at the July 12th ruling from The Hague. The arbitral tribunal has not only drawn strong protests from mainland, but sparked public anger in Taiwan, because Taiping Island, the largest in the South China Sea, is described as a rock instead of a big island. And immediately a majority of the Taiwanese electorate asked Tsai Ing-wen to go to the Taiping Island and to demonstrate its political will to the rest of the world. However, Tsai Ing-wen not only refused to visit the island, but banned those fishermen who wanted to visit the island in the protest. What do you think of her mixed feeling? Is that true that she came under huge pressure from Japan?
Well, let's just look at the public opinion poll. That's the first time you have overwhelming numbers, 62 to 69%, believe that Tsai Ing-wen should take very stern action against that ruling. Taiping is an island, not a rock. For that strong public support, and DPP is a very public opinion poll-oriented party, Tsai Ing-wen opted to be silent even to this day. Her office spokesperson claimed that the fishermen, by going into Taiping Island, will jeopardize the sovereignty claim, which is, of course, a joke. Because if you believe that's your territory, all your citizens should be able to travel to there. Even if you have a forbidden or prohibited area, it's a matter against the law, but not against sovereignty claim. So all of this, including the most recent forum in Taiwan, which was just held days ago, they continue to claim this is not an island, its natural state cannot sustain human habitat. So you ask yourself, why would a leader claim such a thing which is clearly in jeopardy of your own best interest? And there can only be 2-3 reasons. One is they do not want to recognize the post-World War II world order, during which these islands and rocks were returned back to China from Japan. And the deep green people, they did not want to recognize that order. The second one is currently for Taiwan's claim and Taiwan's hope to run an independent path by Tsai Ing-wen, they wanted to lean on the US and Japan side. So they want to do everything that's possible to make them look good in the eyes of the Japanese and their American friends, quote unquote. And that has been challenged in Taiwan by everyone. They said, okay, you can try to lean on their sides, but look what they've done to you. They have promised you that Taiping will be an island, and the ruling came back in black and white. So the harsh history has to teach you a lesson, that by leaning towards the US and Japan side, you not only does not advance your own cause, you even jeopardize the best interests of people in Taiwan. I think that debate and discussion has resulted directly in her drop in public opinion poll.
And Dr. Zhong, do you think the ruling from The Hague has actually brought two sides of the Taiwan Strait closer, and success of China's strength and the claims in the South China Sea would largely depend on an enormous joint effort by the two sides of the Taiwan Strait to safeguard our sovereignty in the South China Sea?
Apparently, this kind of arbitration seems to bring the cross-strait closer. But after that time, then Tsai Ing-wen retreated from her original position. And first, she denies this arbitration result, but finally, she she followed the U.S. Pressure, and she just said we would abide by the international law. We would support the freedom of navigation, something like that. The most important thing is that the Tsai Ing-wen still refuses to accept or to admit the U-line, and that is actually the most important basis for the two sides. So I think I'm not so optimistic about the future cooperation on South issue about, the cross-strait
Right.
cooperation.
After all, lurking behind the Tsai Ing-wen
Yeah.
are two major players, heavyweight players. One is Japan, the other, of course, is the United States,
Yeah.
who urges calm. Now, when 24 tourists from the mainland were killed in a bus fire in Taiwan on July the 19th, Tsai did not say a single word about the perished tourists from the mainland. However, she did say some words about the Taiwan tourist guide who was also killed in the tragedy. How would you comment on her behavior in that scenario?
Well, I think it's an extremely sad tragedy. Most people in Taiwan feel really, really sorry and feel bad about this incident, because you cannot have any political gains behind such human tragedy of loss of lives. But Tsai Ing-wen has been silent, and that silence is unusual and is uncalled for. And I also think that the dealing with the families and relatives when they visited Taiwan were not handled properly. In fact, the Taiwan Red Cross have volunteered to handle this. If it were handled by the Red Cross, which will be it will be a non-government official, so there is no issue with respect to Tsai Ing-wen's political ideology. If it were handled by the Red Cross, they wouldn't be squeezed into an 8-day period. The relatives will be given much more humanitarian treatment and support. And there will be a lot of Taiwanese who show their support to these families. And I just feel sorry that none of this happened. None of this happened in the face of huge human lives and loss. It's unconscionable. Tsai Ing-wen has lost a lot of respect, at least from people around me, feeling that ideology shouldn't take precedent of decency and human concerns. For that, she will still be judged and she will be criticized very harshly. And I just want to say, I feel really sorry that Taiwan didn't handle this properly. Taiwan didn't handle the relatives and their visit to Taiwan in as humane and as empathetic way as possible. We did not do that, and that's really unconscionable.
Hu Tao, political image of Tsai Ing-wen at this moment aside, do you think there will be a sharp decline in the number of mainland tourists who planned to visit Taiwan but would eventually decide to give it up?
Yeah, of course.
Personally, I don't have a feeling of being safe
really?
in Taiwan. Because one after another road accidents took place, and most of them are so tragic and brutal in nature.
But actually now the tourists from Chinese mainland to Taiwan is decreasing with a large amount. Just for this accident, I want to add several words. Just as Joanna said, it is a tragedy, but Tsai Ing-wen shows no sympathy. It exposes her kind of cold-bloodedness, I think. And another point is that Tsai Ing-wen tried to politicalize this accident. You know, after the accident, the Chinese mainland sent a group to handle with this accident, and some of the members are from the Chinese Chinese mainland officials. But Tsai Ing-wen says, or Tsai Ing-wen authority says, you know, just to tell Taiwanese people that you see this is a kind of evidence that the two sides could continue to exchange. There are still channels between the two sides. Actually, this is totally illusion. Since if there is no mutual trust between the two sides, the official communication or official channel could not be opened, could not be reopened.
I do appreciate your job. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
With that, we come to the end of this edition of Dialogue. Until next time, goodbye.